Hey everyone, this is Mark Wilson from the Google Platforms Solutions team. And before we get started today, I recently realized that December 2020 marks my 20th year in digital advertising. And I am so excited to be moderating this panel with both old and new colleagues and friends on such an interesting and emerging space for marketers, personalized video for impactful creative. Just a quick heads up that this session today will be approximately 30 minutes long. We'll have a panel discussion of about 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session with panelists. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Lastly, we will be recording this session, which we will be sending out as a follow-up and will be available online after today. So to start things off at a very high level, when we talk about personalized video, we are talking about an emerging space for marketers that takes current video formats and adds customization at scale. As you will hear from our panel in a short bit, Google has many solutions to achieve this, all of which have been detailed in our recently published Personalized Video Ad Solutions Guide. I'm joined by contributors of the guide to discuss this creative solution and why it's an important tool for marketers. With us today, we have Amal Rana. He's a creative agency lead at Google. He partners with YouTube's largest advertisers and their creative agencies to develop highly effective and breakthrough ads and content on the platform. We also have two folks from Joystick Interactive, one of Google's creative marketing partners. Joystick has not only been instrumental in authoring 2 data-driven solutions guides around personalized video and also display, but they've also been really key partners as it pertains to custom client and project-based solutions around advanced creative strategies. So without further ado, we have Sarah Francis. She's the CEO of Joystick. Sarah and I have been working together for almost 15 years, and Joystick has been one of our largest agency partners for over a decade. And works with us as we go to market with new products. Dave Rosowski, he's the COO of Joystick, and he brings to the table a wealth of knowledge and strategic and technical knowledge working across GMP platforms. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Mark.
Yeah, sure. So to kind of kick things off, the term personalized video or dynamic video, it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I really wanted to just kind of level set. When we talk about personalized video, what do we mean and how are we thinking about it at Google? Amal?
Yeah, so you're right. Personalized video can mean a lot of different things, but our belief is that a one-size-fits-all approach to video ads is actually a thing of the past. Because today, using insights and data, we have the ability to create one video for each audience segment, should we choose to do that. So to kick this thing off with a great example, we're going to show a recent personalization campaign case study from Oreo that we worked with the brand and its agencies. So here we go. So that one always makes me want to eat an Oreo. But really the point there is that ensuring people pay attention to ads, it's about making your ads relevant to both the viewer and the moment. And to us, this is personalization. And I think we've all heard the stats before, but there's one that really sticks out. And it talks about how relevant video ads get 3 times the attention of an average video ad. So if we think about that for a second, that's a pretty striking difference between relevant ads and non-relevant ads. And it also says something about what relevance means in today's consumer's mind.
And so, I mean, you talk about relevance. I mean, relevance seems like such a loose term, but also something that's very well intertwined with personalization. So why specifically is relevance so important as we talk about video ads?
So simply knowing your audience in general is just not enough. Today, advertisers must also know their audience's mindset in the moment they want to reach them and understand in what context that will actually occur. So in other words, understanding audience intent is critical. The right message, the right placement, the right targeting, the right creative in the ad format are all keys to successfully grabbing a consumer's attention. That's a pretty big opportunity for brands. And at Google, our aim is to help brands break through with effective video campaigns by finding ways to easily make ads hyper-relevant.
Yeah. So Sarah, from the Joystick perspective, I mean, is that something that resonates with you guys as well, like as a sort of creative partner of Google and someone who has been, very well entwined with our video campaigns?
Yeah, actually, to add on what Amal said, I actually feel like in the past, we've almost exclusively seen clients give us their TV spot to run in pre-roll placements. But more recently, we've actually had clients asking what more they can do to take advantage of the technology to get their videos to work harder for them. So in my opinion, this is where using the technology to create that more of a one-on-one conversation with your audience comes in. So if you have the ability to customize your message to be hyper relevant to your customer, then why would you continue to serve everybody the same ad? And as an industry on the whole, we talk about personalization and the importance of creating relevant ads, and this should apply to video in the exact same way. Now, I know it can sound overwhelming and like a lot of work to really understand it, but it doesn't have to be. And honestly, with video consumption at an all-time high, with everything going on in the world, we do feel it's worth the effort.
Yeah. So, yeah, these are all great points. And I think that from a marketer perspective, I would love to better understand like how I would approach a personalized video strategy. So maybe Amal, from like the Google sort of end of things, like if you were talking to a client about a personalized video strategy, like how would you ask them to approach it?
So the way that I would ask, and I think a lot of us at Google ask our clients and agencies, is what's the objective of the campaign and what are the KPIs? So it's a similar approach as to any other campaign that the agency or the brand might be working on. And I think this is even more true to understand the objective and KPIs to help shape a personalization strategy, because there's a spectrum of how deep you go. So let's think about two different use cases. One where we create just a few assets and another where we create dozens or even more. So maybe let's hone in on like an insurance brand, for example, where we tap into different life stage or life events. These are things like having a baby, buying a new home, moving into college, and we can actually create and target ads specifically to those audiences. So if we think about insurance, a new baby audience might receive a life insurance ad, whereas a new home buyer might receive a home and auto bundle ad. And so this is personalization with just a few creative assets that you're really just targeting very strategically to different life events. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, let's think about something that has much more broad appeal, like seltzer water, right? Almost everybody drinks seltzer water. And we can look at multiple affinity audiences within that overall consumer space. So let's think about music lovers and green living enthusiasts, technophiles, beauty mavens. These are all types of audiences that drink seltzer water. And we can actually create specific versions of each of these ads, maybe with some copy tweaks or some imagery tweaks, and then have dozens or multiple dozens of personalized video ads. So again, if we go back to what the KPIs and the objectives are, that should always be driving what the strategy is, and it'll help inform which side of the personalization scale that the campaign should lean towards.
Yeah, Sarah, I mean, from your guys' end, is that something that resonates as well?
Yeah, I actually have to echo what Amal said. I really think in order to be successful, it's important to map out what your goals are, and then what you'll need to build that strategy. Since the creative is closely aligned with the audience and the method of delivery, it's important to drive that collaborative process that involves all the team members throughout the entire process. So everything from, really at the beginning, starting to assemble the proper team for the project, given that level of planning and coordination that's required to get it done. So I think in general, you can divvy up the roles and responsibilities between creative teams and media teams, but both should really be involved from the beginning, especially when it comes to aligning that campaign strategy with the audience targets. I think then from there, the next step is really to gather all of the required materials you'll need. So everything from the creative brief, any existing video assets, your copy strategy, the media plan, targeting strategy, and then obviously any technical specs around the exact placements. But then from there, you can really build the overall strategy.
Yeah, and Dave, from the sort of operational technical perspective, how do the sort of strategy pieces fit into the implementation pieces as you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard some good points here. I would add that understanding the technology that powers the video creation is an important component of the strategy. Personalized video campaigns can be somewhat difficult to execute. And if you don't get the tech piece right, you may have a problem. But luckily we have some really good options at our disposal. To make decisions about the tech, we want to understand a few things that will influence what tech we're going to use. So first off, like, are we going to use video variants? And if so, how many variants are we going to have? What's going to be the update cadence? Do we want video that pulls in data on impression, or are daily updates going to be sufficient? For example, loading data on impression requires that we use VPaid, which can limit the available inventory. Then also, where is our audience? Are the videos running in traditional channels, across socials, on connected devices? I mean, the goal is to align our video strategy with our target audience. This is what defines personalization. It's what our users want. And at this point, it's what our users expect. I think asking these types of questions up front is important when coming up with your strategy.
Yeah, so, I mean, we mentioned aligning the video strategy with the target audience. You know, in reality, how does that actually work for a client who's trying to execute on a personalized video solution?
Yeah. So video variants are used when you want to personalize your video for each audience. Essentially, you're going to take a base video asset and then use tech to automate the process of creating each variant and then pushing each variant into the delivery platform. These variants are aligned with the audience. So for example, you can set up line items in DV360 for each audience and then attach a personalized video variant to each of those line items. To make this process easier, we have turnkey tech like Director Mix, which was developed by Google, or custom tech that we build based on each client's individual requirements. There's also third-party platforms out there that are available. One thing these different options have in common is the ability to edit just about any element within the video. So you can have text, audio, graphics, even portions of the video itself. When you automate the process of creating video variants, you can have as many target audiences, and you can update the video they see regularly, such as daily or maybe every few hours. An example of this would be showing different offers based on the user's location, or showing sporting event schedules based on date time filtering, to name a few.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a few different options based on KPIs, based on client assets. Amal, you know, if you were talking to a client about selecting which platforms or solutions and what formats to use, you know, how would you sort of have that conversation with them, and what would you recommend based on requirements for the campaign?
So I think it really depends on whether you need a few assets or if you need customized creative at scale. While you can create a totally unique idea for each audience, it's certainly not required, because you can approach personalization by developing a core idea that allows for slight executional tweaks. So things like personalized text overlays, custom supers, different settings or characters within the creative, or unique CTAs and or offers even. So you can see how there can already be like a ton of different iterations of one piece of creative. So if we think about it, if we go back to just like creating a few examples, right? Let's look at an ad council campaign that was focused on STEM education for girls. What the agency did was they actually tapped into just two of the core audiences. There was a book lovers audience, and these were folks that were really into fantasy and science fiction, and there was a parent of grade schoolers audience, and they were really interested in sports, everything from watching it, playing it, watching their kids play it. They just lived, breathed, and ate sports all day long. And so to build relevant messages, the creative team for this STEM Education for Girls campaign approached it with a text and graphic focused execution that directly spoke to each audience. So for the book lovers audience, the film showcased female history makers and ceiling breakers in the fields of technology and business. And for the parents of grade schoolers who were very sports centric, the film focused on the field of sports. And so these copy and image variations didn't require deep production budgets, a ton of time, or extraneous resources, but it did result in highly effective ads that felt relevant and personal to the folks that were receiving them. So let's take a quick look at both of these ads for STEM Education for Girls. Again, one for book lovers and one for parents of grade schoolers. And we'll look at them side by side just to see some of the differences between the two. So I know that moved pretty quickly, but you can see the ads were pretty similar or almost exactly the same from a structural standpoint. And by taking this approach, advertisers can achieve their goals efficiently and effectively. And so those ads felt unique, but they weren't necessarily completely unique. So now when we look at a campaign on the other side of the scale that calls for 10, 20, 50 versions of video ads, or something that a lot of us call personalization at scale, production can be quite expensive and arduous and just complicated. But fortunately, YouTube has a tool like Director Mix, which Dave mentioned, that can really help solve for this. So what Director Mix does is it turns brands' layered files into dozens of personalized video assets by swapping in images, text, video, and audio layers, and serving them based on intent signals. So here's a great example from Samsung when they launched the Galaxy Note in 2019.
Want to learn something? Learn this.
So that case study does a beautiful job of showing how Director Mix can really take creative and help you produce it at scale. If you think Director Mix is right for you, you can reach out to your Google account representative for consideration into the Director Mix beta program.
Yeah, and Dave, just going back to the question of like choosing platforms and formats and Director Mix versus custom solutions. I feel like this is a relevant question for a lot of clients who are looking for personalized video solutions. Can you just go back and chat a little bit about some of the decisions that might be made at the client end from a sort of tech direction perspective?
Yeah, totally. First off, love that video. Super cool. And there's a lot of decisions that have to be made around You potentially needing to select a platform to produce the personalized video variants, what delivery platform you're going to be using, like within Google or other DSPs, understanding what data is available, and then what formats you're going to be using for the ads, which somewhat is going to be influenced by the inventory that's available. So the first question is, what sort of personalization will influence ROI, or, as Amal had mentioned, help you meet your KPIs? And then also, what data is available to make this personalization interesting? Data might be offers in a database, products in a product feed, real-time data like sporting event APIs. So here's an example. If you're selling a product and building audience lists by category, you can personalize each video by category, which increases relevance, and as Amal had mentioned, increases ROI. Then we ask, what inventory is available? Is it just standard 15s and 30s? Are you running on YouTube, or is this running on CTV? Is VPaid an allowed format? And then next, we're going to ask what platform is being used for delivery. Most of our tech is centered around the GMP, but that doesn't mean that your personalized video can't run on other channels. And all of these things need to be considered and factored into the approach. As a best practice, we take an audience-first approach, meaning that we run in places where the audience spends their time, and we build as many formats, use as many platforms as necessary to reach them. When we do reach them, we want to make sure that in some level, these videos have been personalized.
Yeah, so I think that this is like maybe the more most interesting part of this whole discussion. I mean, can you discuss a little bit, sort of from a technical implementation standpoint, what the difference between automating personalized creative is versus pure dynamic?
Yeah. It gets a bit tricky here because you have to define the word dynamic, which has been hard for the video industry to do. To get true real-time, to-the-second dynamic elements into your creative, you need VPaid. And with it, you open up the opportunity for interactive elements, or really anything you could do in display. Because you're building VPaid units in Google Studio, you have access to the Studio Dynamic platform. And you follow a similar process to building rich media ads. With VPaid, your dynamic elements are going to load on impression. Once it's completed in Studio, you get BAS tags out of Campaign Manager. You can sync that with DV360 and serve programmatically, as long as the VPaid inventory is accepted, of course. But a more common approach is to use video variants. With variants, you have to render the videos in advance and move them into the platform for delivery. You can still hook into data feeds. You can still generate hundreds of variations. You can automate the entire process straight through to delivery, but it doesn't render on impression. So there's a little bit of lag between the creation of the video and the user seeing it. This works great when data changes daily, and with really smart automation, we've seen it done with data changing every few hours. In most cases, using variants in this fashion feels like real time. And it's definitely much better than showing one video to the masses. So we still consider this dynamic. If the video variants are being generated in an automated fashion using real-time data at the time of creation, they're dynamic in nature.
That's great. I mean, so it sounds to me like we have a lot of solutions that are available. It may not be the way that marketers see dynamic as they see their display campaigns, but there are things that we can do to mimic what we're doing from a sort of data-driven display strategy, but with video. And I guess my sort of final question here to the group, and maybe we'll start with them all, is where do you see this going from here? We're obviously sort of in a little bit of a state of flux, but it sounds like there are some really interesting and intriguing solutions right now for marketers. And based on that, where do we sort of see the industry moving in the next few months into the next few years?
Yeah, so I think we're going to be in a state of flux regardless, because things evolve so quickly. And so kind of being comfortable in the uncomfortable will always be key. But from my perspective, ad formats and targeting have gotten more sophisticated than ever, and storytelling possibilities have gotten even more interesting as a result. And Dave mentioned this, but in addition to audience signals, we can think about devices, geography, things like weather, time of day, sports scores. There's all sorts of things we can tap into. And I guess I'll leave you all with this video, which is one of my favorite case studies from Xfinity. And they took data-fueled creative to a whole new level with personalization and just tapping into all different sorts of signals. So here's their campaign case study called Data in Dollars.
Finish there.
The next basketball highlight video could cost you up to $1.31 in data.
What?
Switch to Xfinity Mobile and save.
Today's look is going to be a tutorial on this.
The next makeup tutorial could cost you up to $1.57 in data.
Ew.
Switch to Xfinity Mobile and save. The next game review could cost you up to $1.93 in data.
Wait, what?
Seriously? For real? That's expensive.
Who, me?
I love that, and it's obviously a great way to end this session. But just to sort of wrap things up a little bit, I think Google as a whole, whether it's YouTube or whether it's GMP, we do have a lot of great solutions around personalized video strategies, and I think that this is certainly not only an emerging space, but a space that's here to stay. So obviously, please stay tuned on more solutions and more strategies that our teams will be providing in the coming months and years. But what I would like to do now is just turn it over to a little bit of Q&A. I think we have a couple of questions that were moderated from our audience, and I would love to start with this one, which is, what advice or first steps would you suggest for companies that don't have much experience with personalized campaigns of any kind? I may toss this over to Sarah. Sarah, not to put you on the spot, but this is for you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Mark. I think depending on where you're starting, I mean, if you have a direct line into a Google rep, I would really start there as far as just discussing kind of what goals you have and what is possible with the inventory and the technology, just to dive a little deeper into some of the things that we started talking about today. Also, definitely not a shameless plug, but I would say connect with a partner. We're all here to support requests like this, and all of the Google partners have different areas of expertise. And I think it's really important to leverage those partners to help, further your campaigns. But simultaneously, I think if you are starting to run dynamic display ads, or if you have, spent any time in this space, you could start there and start to glean some insights as as a starting point. I know the question was around if you haven't done any at all, but I think you'd be surprised to know, obviously, personalizing your video and doing personalized campaigns, you may be surprised that you've actually done a lot of work here, right? Like as far as through your normal creative process, you're looking at what audiences you want to reach. A lot of what Amal talked about at the beginning of just what the creative process looks like, and that collaboration, I would, in tandem, start to think about what goals you're trying to accomplish. And then overall, I think the landscape's changing quite dramatically. I mean, we're really excited to partner with Google on that tech as it continues to be developed into new emerging spaces like CTV. So that would be just sort of my advice to start.
Yeah, and speaking of CTV, the next question actually sort of responds to that. I think one of the major questions we get around video at this point is the ability to use video variants or formats across different channels and platforms like mobile and CTV. Maybe Dave, are there considerations that clients should be aware of if they're trying to maximize their personalized video strategy across multiple platforms and channels?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question with a pretty simple answer. So, and maybe I didn't explain it before in great detail, but when you're creating video variants, the file that's being exported is a video file. And so really that video file can be used across all channels. If you're creating variants that are 15 seconds versus 30 seconds, that may be one thing to consider as to what inventory is available. But a video variant is a video file like an MP4 format, and those can be then automated into the platforms or uploaded manually into the platforms and served across all the channels that you just named.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also maybe a good follow-up question is like, if I feel like a lot of marketers probably start with dynamic or data-driven display campaigns and are now kind of trying to dip their toes into data-driven personalized video solutions. So are there any like process or tech synergies that you can think of about running a dynamic display video with running a dynamic video? Like, are there similarities? Are there differences that a marketer should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, this is the exciting part, especially for people like you and I, Mark, who have been in display for probably way too long. The beauty of it is that the data set that's being used in the display campaigns can also be used in the video campaigns, and we didn't really used to have that. So if you have a product list, you can now do personalized video campaigns that are updating based on each individual product. If you have a display campaign that's showing offers, you can do something very similar in video now by hooking into the feed essentially and creating all of your variants based off of the feed. And in a lot of cases, that's the exact same feed that you're already using in your dynamic display campaigns.
Oh, music to my ears. And I guess the final question, maybe for Amal, is just regarding, I know you talked about contextual relevance earlier in the conversation. So how do you think about targeting different video versions to get to relevant content?
I think it all starts with understanding the audience. And so I think before you even kind of get down to the targeting level, you have to think about the brief and what information you're putting in that creative plus media brief, because as we've talked about today, personalization is equal parts, really, it's creative plus media, right? And so really understanding the audience, the landscape, and then informing the creative idea with those inputs will then result in which side of the scale you tip on, right? Paired with objectives and KPIs, which I know I'm beating that one to death a little bit, but it is super important. But once you have all of those things figured out, you'll have an idea that resonates versus being shoehorned in. I know a lot of us, I think, Sarah, you mentioned this a lot of times, we're getting a TV ad and we're having to figure out how to personalize it. And it's difficult to do. So if you start from the ground up, you'll then have a much easier and efficient time in terms of targeting. In terms of getting the video out, Dave mentioned a few solutions, like we've talked about direct remix. There's other third-party solutions and custom solutions that can be built. I think that's going to depend on how many versions that there are and how long the campaign runs. And it eventually, at some point, and I think some of it exists today, is how dynamic do you want those ads to be? So I think the place to start, this is a great place to start having an understanding of all of the different inputs that go into a brief, both from a strategy and an execution standpoint. And then you can make informed decisions on how you get that creative out.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap up. And I know we're at the end of the panel discussion here, and this has been a really, really great discussion. And we're just sort of scratching the surface here. I do want to quickly call out again, as I did at the beginning, there is a complete guide to personalized video solutions on our solutions guide site, which we will be able to offer for folks on this live stream and also who are watching this video at home. And we will certainly be able to send out a recording of this video along with any follow-up questions that we did not get to. I want to extend a huge thank you to the panelists, everyone who's been involved in this, and everyone who has joined us today. Thank you so much and have a wonderful holiday season.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.